But the earliest memory I think I do have is reaching late for the plane, which was the old airport in Piaco, reaching late for that. And I remember looking out through the window and just seeing like it kind of brownish, hazy red clouds, and that was my earliest memory. I couldn't remember my mother even when she came to see her son, I asked if that was my aunt. Coming down in Trinidad and Tobago is where I was made to be aware of the difference of how those people are treated differently to us. And in my mind, it was like, why? Whereas I grew up calling the woman who I know as second mother, she is exactly the same as these people who you saying to be treated different. So again, there was the feeling of being misplaced. The influences on my writing, I believe, came from, the speakers of long time. Those who had a great influence on the people. I once heard us saying the pen is mightier than the sword, and seeing what the effects of the pen had when voiced. I said that, I want to be one of those great writers, one of those great speakers. So the influence for me came from the motivation that drove them of old. Benjamin Zephaniah had, to me, I could have identified with his struggle growing up in England because he was a Jamaican poet who left and migrated to London. He had the struggles even more racially than I had it. So me not going through as much of the troubles that he went through, I could have identified, and I saw poetry as a means to let out that voice that I couldn't use because be it I was too young or nobody didn't want to hear. But his happiness, because most of his poems are actually happy poems. He don't really have no sad poem. I remember one of his sad poems was about his cat, but his happiness is what drove me to say, well, let me find that voice and find that happiness too. I was always the youngest. When I left with my great aunt and I went to London, I was the youngest in the household. So I was always subject to orders, but I wasn't a sheep. I had my own mind. So that's some things I would have liked to say, but being the youngest in the household, I wasn't able to, because I might have been deemed as rude or disrespectful. I remember one of my aunt, Heather, she is a great influence on me because of the lines. We used to get lines and we would write back and front of the page on the same thing over and over. For example, I will not break the glass. So we would write that over and over. And I remember in 2008 when I flew back out, she told me many times she wanted to know if I was like a big man in a little man body. So I always had that voice. I always had that something to say. I just couldn't say it, I wouldn't want to say I was abused a lot coming up, because in the Caribbean culture, licks isn't deemed as bad as it is in London. And I was with a Caribbean family at the end of the day. My kind of trouble might have been somewhat unusual for them because, I still had the Caribbean culture in me, which yes, it had me feeling misplaced. I had was to still try and find out where I belong. Is this right to do? Is this wrong to do? You're not allowed to walk outside bare feet. That is seen as unusual. Whereas down in my homeland, being outside bare feet was a norm. Being done by me at the age of 4 or 3, I was done already running up and down in the road bareback, playing pitch around maybe the older fellas. And it was a whole shift in emotion, a whole shift in mental I had was to adapt. I mean, even my accent changed. And that was just to show how I was absorbing everything. So in England, for me, it was more observation and absorption. I didn't know what I was doing until Miss Debbie Jacob come and say, yo, this what you're doing here. I mean, Miss Debbie compare me to people like Ernest Hemingway and Earl Lovelace. And to me, that is an honor, my mother, because my mother used to always drill me on vocabulary and drill me on how to hold a pen and how to posture myself to get my handwriting, tip top. I don't know what she saw in the writing. I mean, again, maybe they didn't know that it was so important and it will become so important in my life. And then more recently, we have Simba, who would have boosted my confidence into the speed of my writing, into the substance of my writing. Different people come into your life at times and we don't know what they're there for until you sit down and you analyze everybody in your life and their purpose.